And welcome back. This is Trevor Crow. I am now on Zoom with Eric Russell, our treasurer of the state of Connecticut. Hey, Eric, how are you?
Hey Trevor, I'm doing well. How are you?
I am delighted to see you. Absolutely wonderful. Oh, and in the back there, you've got baby bonds. I can see
We
some stuff
do.
behind you. We're gonna jump into all of that, but right off the bat, I would love it if you would tell us what you actually do. I think a lot of people are like, "What does the state treasurer do anyway?"
Yeah, we get a lot of those questions. And first, Trevor, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here. Wish I was joining you in person, but I'm glad we made it work. Listen, the role of treasurer is pretty broad, and most people understand that I'm involved in managing money in some way, but we cover and serve essentially as the elected chief financial officer for the state. So I oversee all of the state's cash and debt, how we borrow to end up investing in things like schools and transportation infrastructure and childcare facilities. All of our pension assets serve as the principal fiduciary. So I work very closely with our investment advisory council and our professional investment team in-house to manage the retirement security for state employees and teachers and retirees. I oversee our Chet 529 college savings program.
Hmm.
But also, what I love is the role really thinking longer term, and it's while it's about investing direct assets, it's also about how we're investing in people and how we are building the economy that we really want to see in the future in Connecticut. And so I'm excited that I'm able to bring that perspective in really shaping policy that is thinking about what we want Connecticut to look like and how are making sure we're creating opportunity for more residents in our state.
Absolutely love it. And it's really important. We have to invest in our young people. And as we started, I looked behind you. I see that baby bonds. So talk to us about that. I mean, there's so many things I want to ask you. So I'm going to start with that quickly and then we'll move on from there.
Sure. So, for those who are not familiar, Connecticut Baby Bonds is a first in the nation program that we launched on July 1st of 2023 here in Connecticut, and it's about investing directly in the future, in our young people. Connecticut is one of the wealthiest states in the country, but has one of the largest wealth gaps. And so, what this program does is for every child who's born into poverty in Connecticut, which we use for every child whose birth is covered by Husky, the state's Medicaid program, there is $3,200 that is invested and dedicated in a trust on their behalf. And I invest those funds alongside our pension assets. And when that child is reaches the age of 18 and anywhere between the ages of 18 and 30, they can access those resources for wealth building purposes. So to help purchase a home here in Connecticut, to start or invest in a Connecticut business, to help pay for post-secondary education or job training, or to roll into a retirement savings account. And I think what's critical here is as we continue to do the work to really improve our overall fiscal health, which the state has made an incredible amount of progress on. Again, these key investments in the future and in creating more opportunity and making Connecticut more affordable, where the goal here is really to ultimately end poverty in Connecticut, but to make sure that we have more people who are meaningfully participating in the state's economy.
Absolutely wonderful. Brilliant. Great idea. I believe there's a federal effort to do this as well. It's been picked up by other states. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I've been working with other states, New Mexico, Massachusetts, Vermont, Rhode
Mm.
Island, who are all interested in passing similar programs in their state. There has also been legislation proposed multiple years now on the federal level, largely through Cory Booker and Ayanna Pressley, but to pass a similar version of baby bonds on the federal level, understanding that this challenge and this wealth divide that continues to grow is not
Mm.
specific to Connecticut. We're really seeing it all across the country.
Just love that you've been doing that hard work. Okay, so let's kind of go back to the state of Connecticut financially. I know that when Lamont got elected, we had a out of control pension debt. What's happened?
Sure. So this has been a challenge for Connecticut for many, many decades, and it's been a result of people in government just being really short-sighted, right? We went about 70 years without properly funding our pensions. And if you look at the progress that's been made in terms of making our required contributions to our pension fund, that really started back in 2011, and we've been consistent in making those contributions. But in just the last 4 or 5 years, in addition to those required contributions, we'll have put in at the end of this year over $10 billion of additional contributions into our pension fund, really doing the work to dig out of that hole and improve our overall fiscal health as we've done work to we've had 7 balanced budgets and record surpluses. We have 18% of our budget in a rainy day fund, which is allowing us to really withstand volatility and uncertainty, and navigating this pension debt. My job is to make sure that those funds that we're putting into our pension, that we're performing well. And so over the last several years, we've done a lot of work really to make sure that we are improving our process, that we have a really talented investment team on board, that we are being more efficient, that we're lowering fees, really to drive strong performance of our pension fund. And, really proud of our record. Over the last 3 years, we performed on average at about 10%. We are in the top
Wow.
quartile of public pension plans in our peer group. It's a lot more work that needs to be done, but we made some incredible progress as a state.
That's really impressive. Okay, so it's been 70 years. We allowed this pension debt to balloon. We've paid down now about 10 billion of it. That frees up a lot of interest payments, right? 600, 900 million a year. Is that correct?
Close to about 900 million in a year, that in terms of our
Wow.
lowering our required contribution on an annual basis. And what that
Mhm,
is
mhm.
funds that are freed up in the general fund that we now can use to support services and programs to lower costs for families in our state. Tax cuts that have been proposed and passed by the governor and legislature in recent years, largely as a result of the work that's being done to get our fiscal house in order.
Really impressive. And again, there's this performance that you guys have put together. You've hired this very talented team. You're lowering your fees. This really helps all of us. And thank you. I mean, thank you for your service again. But that it is truly impressive to be running at a 10% per year for 3 years, in a row. Wow. I'll give you my money.
Yeah, no, I
um,
appreciate it. What I'll say is it really is a testament to the team that we've put together and the work of our investment advisory council, which is made up of really talented, experienced investors. And so, it's that team effort. But if you think about, if folks are thinking about how this impacts them, we performed just in the last fiscal year at over 10%. Um, but what that does to our pension fund, it added about $5.9 billion in assets to the pension fund just in fiscal year 2025 alone. Fiscal year
Fabulous.
2024 was about 5.7 billion in assets that were added to the pension fund. So this is really, we're making significant progress, and we need to keep our head down. This is we're long-term
Yes,
investors, but it's nice to see us
absolutely.
moving in the right direction.
Huge. So, what is the actual debt now, and how do we rank with other states? Because I know for a long time we were down like 47 or 48 or something. Where are we now?
In terms of so we'll have our new valuation that comes out right at the beginning of December usually. That will factor in the performance and contributions for fiscal year 2025. So we'll see. I think we're likely going to be around 63% funded. Again, in terms of progress, though, right? 10 years ago we were right around 30% funded.
Wow,
And 10 years ago, we had about 30 billion in assets under management, and we're sitting at about 65 billion in assets under management. And so,
fabulous.
a lot of progress, still much more work to do, but I think we're in a really strong spot overall.
So hopefully those teachers, retired teachers and whatnot, are feeling pretty comfortable. So that goes to, I've got a couple of questions, but do you guys invest in crypto? Is that part of your team
Strategy?
strategy?
We do not. So we're not invested
Uh-huh.
in crypto. And actually in Connecticut, just this recent session, and I don't know if this was fully intentional in terms of impacting the pension fund, but we we're actually prohibited from investing in digital assets at this point.
Mm, mhm,
What I will say is that, from our perspective, we and the investment team, we're making sure that we are staying on top of the education around all of these emerging
mhm,
new ways of investing and asset classes. We don't have any plans to invest in crypto at this point. It's, as long-term investors, it is still very new and very
mm.
volatile and uncertain. But I think it's important that we are keeping an eye on where digital assets are going.
Got it. That's important. Another, sort of, what do you think about investing in this basketball team, the Sun? But how do you feel about that?
No, I appreciate the question. There's a lot of information and misinformation out there about the
Hmm.
topic. And the reality is that where we are right now, the governor has been working and negotiating with the NBA and WNBA. We are not, actively involved at this point because even in terms of exploring what an investment would look like, we would have to understand what that first piece of the deal would potentially look like. There is a lot of excitement around investment in women's sports and the WNBA in
Hmm.
particular. We've seen a lot of growth in the space. For me, to be very clear, we will not be invested in anything that is not in the best interest of pensioners and
I love that.
state employees and teachers and retirees. That is the sole driver of the decision making out of our office and with the investment team. So to the extent that there is a deal that is reached between the governor and the WNBA, we would be happy to really analyze what a potential investment would look like, but we have there's no direct plan, and it was not really on our desk at this point.
Got it. Got it. Okay, so kind of pivoting to how you're handling the shutdown. How is that going to affect those of us in Connecticut? I personally, I am on the Access Health, the Affordable Care Act. So, can we do anything about this? We don't really know. It's the government's still shut down. What are we doing to prepare for any of these
Yeah, what I would
developments?
say first and foremost is I think in thinking about where we are in Connecticut and because of the discipline that we've shown, we're in a much better spot than most of our peers in
Mm,
terms of navigating all of this uncertainty and volatility and frankly cruelness that's coming out of Washington. We have significant reserves that are on hand. We've been really responsible about our budgeting that puts us in a strong space. And right now, most states are raising revenue and trying to figure out how they're going to dig out a deficit. So we're in a much better position. But the reality is that we are going to be significantly impacted by federal policy. And if you look at this
mhm,
budget that was most recently passed on the federal level, what it does is it guts the social safety net for many of the most vulnerable in our communities.
mm,
Um, if you think about programs like Medicaid and food assistance programs and housing assistance programs, and passes those costs and burdens on to states, including the administration of those programs. At the same
mm.
time, it extends tax cuts for some of the most wealthy and largest corporations in our country. And by the way, adds $4 trillion to the national deficit at the same time,
Crazy.
which is
Absolutely
like swiping the
irresponsible.
credit card for our kids and grandkids. And so,
Mhm,
in Connecticut, I think we're going to be in a position in trying to look at this holistically and see what we can backfill. How are we protecting residents, particularly the most vulnerable? But it will be a significant, it will take a significant hit. I think in terms of the shutdown right now, that is driven by really trying to protect access to care and
mm, mhm,
Medicaid for families. And to your point, knowing how you would be directly impacted by these cuts to credits to the program. Um, but I think a lot of this it's going to depend on how long this
shutdown
shutdown
lasts.
drags on to know how we will fully be impacted. What I will say is that there are families right now who are being directly harmed, who are worried about where that
Mm.
next paycheck is coming from, whether or not their food assistance is going to come through. And I think the governor and legislature will all continue to work collaboratively to try to make sure we're providing that backstop to what's happening on the federal level.
It's quite a burden that being given all of this, not only the cost of it, but the administration of it. I read, I think it was Friday, the federal government shut down special education in the education department, which I do know is very important and expensive. So that's going to add to your burden as well as I'm guessing. Is that correct?
I mean, all of it. I think we're all going to be navigating what resources we can pull for what support and trying to prioritize that. I know our nonprofit community is very much struggling right now. You see grants that are being cut around research and development, right? I mean, every sector and industry is ultimately being impacted. And then you still have policies like tariff policy and
Mm-hmm.
mass deportation policy that is hitting families and businesses in our community, and it continues to drive up cost for families. I think when we are looking at what we can evaluate and how we navigate it, I mean, we know that we can't backfill everything. And just as an example of this, when we think about Medicaid, in fiscal year 2024, Connecticut received over $6.5 billion in matching funds on the federal level for Medicaid. We will never, as a state, be able to backfill
Six
a
and a half
cut like that,
billion.
right?
Yeah.
And when you think about it, we have, nearly 1 million people in Connecticut who are dependent on Medicaid, with, close to 400,000 of them being children.
Oh
And
my
so these are
goodness.
all of these things that we're going to have to evaluate as a state. And it's hard when there is so much just uncertainty and, something new is being thrown at the wall every day.
Mm. You have a big job and you're doing it rather well. Anybody who happens
Thank
to
you.
be tuning in right now, I am Trevor Crow. The show is Trevor and Friends. I am on Zoom with Eric Russell, our state treasurer, and I'm hearing so much good, but also a lot of concern and forward looking towards our future and how do we support our vulnerable populations, children, the sick, healthcare, foods, well, a SNAP program, et cetera. It goes on and on. Housing. So that is there. Are we looking in the state legislature right now to pass any bills as we come into the next session? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so we've been really fortunate in terms of accomplishments in the office and getting a lot of legislation passed through the office over the last few years. And a lot of that is, again, in large part due to uh, great collaboration with the legislature and the governor. So a lot of the work on the pension side, strengthening our investment advisory council, making sure we can recruit and retain talent. We've passed expansions to programs like CHED, our 529 college savings program,
Mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
now actually has a tax credit that is provided to businesses who are contributing to CHED accounts for employees and their children. Baby bonds, as I mentioned, was a
Mm-hmm.
program really thinking longer term, making a historic investment in young people. This past legislative session, the Early Childhood Education Endowment, which is a huge new piece of
Huge.
legislation that is also a first in the nation structure, right? Where this endowment that is seeded and will be contributions will go in every year, but by fiscal year 2028, all families making under $100,000 a year in Connecticut who are part of the Early Start programs, those families will have access to free childcare, and
That's
all families
amazing.
making over 100,000 will be capped at 7% of income. The goal here is to ultimately have universal pre-K, but it's being done in a sustainable way that's really about affordability for families and driving our economy of the future, making sure that parents can get back to work rather than deciding between, working and all of their income going toward childcare versus staying home with their child.
So brutal. It is
And
so
so
brutal.
I know the legislature will continue. There's so much more work that needs to be done always, right? As we
Mm-hmm,
know, folks
mm-hmm.
are struggling with, we've done a lot of work, I think, in terms of getting our fiscal house in order and getting out of our position of fiscal crisis. I think the other challenge that we have is dealing with the crisis of affordability for so many families.
Oh,
And so
and I agree with you. The childcare piece is such a big piece, and a lot of people cannot afford to work. Literally, you have to stay home because it costs so much. What you guys did was really interesting, and you've really created a program that is sustainable, and you're putting contributions into a fund that grows, compounded interest, hopefully good management, all that stuff. So over time, it sort of pays for itself. Where do the contributions come from?
for the early childhood
Yeah.
endowment. Yeah, so those contributions, there was 300 million that was put in from surplus in fiscal year 25.
Okay,
And so
got
it's
it.
operating surplus that is put in, and the plan will be to take operating surplus annually and add this to the endowment um, until the endowment reaches a point that it will be fully self-sustainable. So the
That's
idea
great.
is that there's a percentage that can be used on an annual basis. This is not only to cover just the cost for those families in terms of childcare, but it's also about investing in the childcare industry. What we know one of the
Hmm.
challenges right now is um, we have childcare facilities where you have teachers, educators that are leaving the childcare space to go work at a grocery store because they make more money.
It's
And so this is
crazy.
really about looking at wage parity, looking at health insurance and benefits
Hmm.
for those educators to make it more attractive, but also to build out the infrastructure, knowing that there's so much need and demand for really high quality, affordable childcare in the state.
I couldn't be more supportive of this. And of course, we know anybody, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. Um, the earlier kids get this kind of attention and solid, um, educated, stable environment, it's great for brain development, literally over time, right from the get-go. And parents are having sort of cobbled together different ways to watch their kids. It's not good for the kids. So having this really stable, organized, calm environment is great for everyone. So I'm so happy you guys are really focused on this. I'm
Yeah,
going to run over to talk about some of these, the fiscal guardrails. the
Okay.
volatility cap, and what you're thinking about, because you've done such a nice job. So you end up with a bunch of surplus. Are you being, do the guardrails kind of hold you back, or how do you handle all that? I'm not sure I get all the details here.
Yeah, so the guardrails, or fiscal guardrails colloquially coined, right, is the parameters around how we can budget, how we can spend, how much we can borrow, right? And particularly with the volatility cap, the challenge in Connecticut, we have a lot of volatile revenue that's, if you think about it from capital gains, for example, where as a state, we would budget off of what we anticipated those more volatile revenues to be. And if we had a downturn in the market, for example, we would end up with a really significant hole in the budget as a result
Mm,
of that. And so what the volatility cap does is it limits how much of that more volatile revenue we can budget off of. And then anything that comes in over that, we then use to pay down long-term debt. That's been the source of a lot of the funds that have gone into paying down our unfunded pension liability. And the guardrails overall have been very effective. And I think that
mm.
frankly, they've been more effective in this goal than what they were initially anticipated or designed to do.
Really
Um,
fantastic.
and I think what we've done, and if you look at this in terms of recent tweaks to the guardrails, that the goal there was to say, okay, we are continuing to make really significant efforts on our fiscal health. What flexibility do we have to address some of these other things where that really
Mm,
require investment as well? And I think, we're in a spot now where as a state where we can try to really focus on balancing those interests,
hmm
which has been really effective. This is largely how things like the early childhood endowment have been able to be stood up. I think that the conversations going forward, the guardrails are in place through fiscal year 2028, that the governor and legislature and our office will be having conversations around exactly what the guardrails should look like going forward, and
hmm
whether or not they really allow us the best method of kind of balancing those interests moving forward.
So it's possible to extend it. It might be tweaked a bit.
Possible, yeah. Those are going to
Yeah.
conversations that I don't think anyone is having yet, but I'm
It's
sure
not
will be
far away.
conversations moving forward. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how fast this time is going. Now, how is AI affecting the way you're doing business, how you're looking at the state, how the state is being run? Are you implementing it at all, in how, investment processes? What's it look like for you?
Yeah, I think the AI space is so interesting and it's moving so rapidly. I think
Hmm
more quickly than people probably realize. And obviously, there's a huge amount from the investment side. There's a lot of investment in the AI space right now. Some of it is kind of direct investment in AI and the growth of AI. You see a lot of consolidation in the S&P and some of the
hmm
largest tech companies that are really driven by AI investment. I think the way we look at it is AI is a tool, right? And has this ability to really make the work that other people are doing more efficient and more effective. There's obviously the balancing act with understanding how that's impacting the labor market and jobs and things
hmm
like that. But many of the companies that we're investing in, um, they are really implementing AI to make their businesses more efficient and more profitable. That's where we're seeing a lot of investment. You also see it a lot around kind of the software and tools that AI is then going to be reliant on, or that businesses are going to be reliant on as a result. And so, I think with us, we are constantly looking for ways to be more efficient. We've done a
hmm
lot of work to implement new technology in this office, particularly around unclaimed property, with our
hmm
goal of getting resources and funds back to people more quickly. And we'll continue to monitor how we use these new technologies in a way that's responsible and confidential and protects people's interest as well.
Well, that office that you have, the unclaimed property, just to tell people a little bit about this, because
Yeah.
by the way, you've done a great job for me. So,
Well, I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, so unclaimed property are funds that are turned over to the state by holders. So this could be a old bank account that someone lost track of. It could be a doctor or dentist office that owes you a reimbursement check that they didn't get back to you. And eventually those monies are required to be turned over to the state. And my job is to get that back to you as quickly as possible. So for anyone listening, if you go to
mhm,
ctbiglist.gov, it is the website that we have our database of unclaimed property. You can search your name and submit a claim right through that website. And our goal is to get that back to you. We also have, through a lot of the new technology, have actually just been sending direct checks out when we can match information and addresses we'll get checks out as quickly as possible. So everyone should check it out. And I always say, I check it annually myself. I usually do it when I'm doing my taxes
Mhm.
because those unclaimed properties can be posted at any point throughout a year.
It's such a great service, and thank you so much. And the person who helped me out did a fantastic job. So just so you know, good feedback there. One that before we wrap up, one last question. It's do you feel this AI, they're eye-watering amounts of money? Is it possibly a bubble? Are we getting to that place where these big companies are investing in one another's vendors are investing in OpenAI? I mean, it seems like just one big round circle of investing to crazy amounts of money. How are you feeling
Yeah.
about that?
No, I think that's the industry is monitoring this very closely, right? I think it's one, I think the AI space is one that from a broader um, national perspective is we can't lose the race in AI. And I think that that's
Mm,
where you're really seeing so much investment and interest. And again, I think this is going to develop a lot more quickly than people realize. That being said, I think to your point, um, we do need to be careful about how people are going about it. And
mhm.
particularly from the investment side, how these things are being valued, how these companies are being valued. Because if you look at the, S&P, for example, right now, there is so much consolidation and concentration in terms of what is really driving that performance. And a lot of it is this AI investment
I
by
think
some
what
of the
like
largest companies.
maybe 10 companies are driving the S&P right now, and it's
Yep.
all focused on AI, which I think is a little scary, right?
It is. It's concern. I mean, I think that's why it's being monitored very
Mhm.
closely. The other side of that, and I think there are many people of the opinion that this is going to be such a rapidly growing space that there is going to be so much more investment moving forward that this isn't even really the tip of the iceberg. But uh, we will
Eric,
we will
we
see.
I am so pleased to get caught up with you, talk to you, and thank you for coming on the show and discussing what's going on in Connecticut. And you're doing a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. I appreciate you having me on.